I'm Aria Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. The Seattle Storm. What's their roster situation, and what situations are they facing this free agency period? Let's dive in. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community. Patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at Winsidr.com. That's Winsidr.com. Remember, downloading the episode allows us to continue doing this important work. So please download the episode. Want to sponsor an episode or more of the Winsidr Show? Email us, info@winsidr.com. We got a fun one for you. This is where it gets tricky. This is where it's one of those choose your own adventure books for the Seattle Storm. Rachel, how happy are you that you are not the Seattle Storm's GM today?
I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, it's like you said, choose your own adventure. What's going to happen? Are we going to blow this whole thing up, or are we going to continue to kind of run it back and ride out what we think this team can do? And I'm obviously way more lenient towards the latter of, hey, all right, Sue Bird's coming back. Let's give it another go. Let's secure Brianna Stewart. Let's secure Jewel Lloyd. Let's find a way to bring back Canada and Russell. But within that, in order to do all the things I just mentioned, there's going to be some cap issues and potentially casualties. So, Ari, I'll let you get down into some of that a little bit. But in my opinion, I think it really comes down to keeping this core team together that we know, has been really, really good and had a lot of success. And a lot of these younger players are trending in the right direction, right? Like Kiki, Ezzy, like there's a lot of potential on this roster. I wouldn't blow it up. I would do everything I could to bring everybody back and solidify this team as, the Seattle Storm in the last decade. Not really, not last decade, less, 5-6 years. But that's going to be tough to do. Go ahead.
It's going to be tough to do, and let's break down why. Currently on roster, Epiphany Prince, Kiki Herbert-Harrigan, Kennedy Burke, Katie Lou, Ezzy those are the 5 currently on roster. And while you talked about it, Kiki's shown a lot of promise. Kennedy Burke, people know her story. Shout out to bottom dwelling teams cutting the wrong player. Katie Lou for just $72,000 is a steal, and Ezzy at 60. This team needs to take care of this because this year, Ezzy for that cheap really allows them to have high skill, high player IQ, an up and coming player for just a ridiculously low roster cap size. Now the obvious re-signs, right? Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart, Jewel Lloyd, right? They have 986K, right? So this team can spend the money to bring all 3 back, but this is where it kind of becomes a choose your own adventure, because while Sue Bird has announced that she's coming back, and I don't think anybody doubts whether or not she's going to be playing for Seattle. If Seattle can pay her a penny, she'll play for them. But realistically, out of respect and out of the fact that Sue Bird never in her career in the W was allowed to make this much money, you have to assume that she's going to be making somewhere near that supermax price tag. Stewie, you need to throw all the money so that she decides, I want to be like Sue when I grow up and never leave the Storm ever. Because I don't care what happens. If Stewie leaves this team, they immediately go from a contending team to back in the days of not making the playoffs. And you look at this roster and you go, okay, but what happens to Jewel? Does Jewel want to play third fiddle to Sue and Stewie for another season? Maybe Sue doesn't come back and then it's just her and Stewie. But again, her star has continued to shine over the past few years. I mean, I close my eyes and I see that dagger of a shot that she hit with time expiring in the bubble against LA, foot arguably out of bounds already, whatever it is. Like, she has just continued to grow and grow. And I think similar to some other players that we've kind of seen in a similar realm at certain points, where you're excited about, like, okay, could they take that next step? Could they grow? A Kalia Copper, a Diamond to Shields, a Chelsea Gray. Like, these were all players who had shown enough of that glimmer of superstardom. And I'd say Jewel's almost bigger than all of them at this point. But just in the sense of her sitting there and going, okay, do I want to try and finally let my star shine fully? And that's where the choose your own adventure comes in, because let's run through the scenario of they re-sign all three of them around, give or take, the super max pricing, right? So you're going to want to cash these people out as much as you can. And what's going to end up happening is you're spending give take over 600,000, which leaves them again. I know people are going to come at me and be like, well, you can't supermax that player and you blah blah blah. We're not trying to get into like all the numbers, the deep dives, but this is the Winsidr show where Rachel and Arya talk about ridiculous things. No, um, but so you're talking about, being down to around 300K give take for Mercedes Russell and Jordan Canada, two players that I'd say are extremely important for you to run it back,
Very
right?
much.
They are the depth.
Yeah.
They are what makes this team survive. And like, we've talked about this for years now. The Seattle Storm team is just like a machine. It just keeps rolling. Last year, there was points where they just plugged in, scratches off the bench. They were flagging people down from the rafters, or what? There's a better reference. They were flagging people from the stadium to come play for them. And it's just such an elite machine. You could plug in random players and it truly worked out well because of their flow. Now, you have a new coach who's finally stepping in with a full season, with Noel Quinn taking over midway through last season. You have a full-on new thing, but you have to think they want to run it back. Jordan Canada, Mercedes Russells are going to be their key, but it gets tricky because, like I said, with around 300K left for those two players, is 150 for both of them a crazy thing? Not necessarily. It's just going to be hard because they're restricted free agents, which means any team can, sign them a check, and the Storm are going to have to match that to keep their rights. And so that's where it gets really tricky. And realistically, if the numbers pan out like that, this is a 10 player
Yeah.
team.
Yeah, which we've talked about a lot in recent years, especially with the Connecticut Sun. I mean, they're different sorts of situations, but like right now, talking about what we're saying, unless people are willing to come back for less, which is entirely in the realm of possibilities, yeah, you're looking at just 10 players, which, is obviously really, really tough to do. So it's hard for me to envision Seattle going away from what they have groomed Jordan Canada to be during this period of time. And Mercedes Russell has been really good for them. So, I mean, in my opinion, you're bringing everybody back. You're bringing everyone. You're hoping that everybody wants to come back. You're bringing Canada. You're bringing Russell. I would be shocked if Seattle went away from that. To me, the biggest question mark is Jewel Lloyd, and what is she wanting? What is she wanting the trajectory of her career to be, and what is the buy-in of this team? Is everyone going to rally around the idea of, okay, let's run it back one more year with Sue? Maybe Jewel agrees to 1 year. Who knows? But yeah, that 10-player roster could be a concern.
Oh, it could definitely be a concern. I think there's one easy way out, and that would be Epiphany Prince. She's
Yep.
scheduled, slotted, whatever you want to call it, to make 115K. That, like, no hate to Epiphany Prince. I know she's had a great WNBA career, has done a bunch of amazing things in high school and college and the pros overseas. At the end of the day, she's not worthy. No, worthy isn't the right word. She
It's just
she
it's
can't.
too big of a contract to be carrying to secure everything else you're trying to do.
Thank you. That's Rachel, and this is why people call me Hater Yay. Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, yeah, granted, taking 20K from her, 25K from her is not the biggest deal. You drop her down to the 90s. And I doubt it would be like, look, for those players like her who aren't making an insane paycheck overseas, aren't making an insane sponsorship deal, yes, that does hurt your pocket. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's where they got to be looking. If you're smart, You cut her, you try and re-sign her for slightly cheaper. Um, and that's just strictly what it comes down to because they need to free up a little bit of space. And excuse me, they need to pull the James Wade with the Vanderquigs. And what I mean by that is you need to tell Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart and possibly Jewel Lloyd, probably won't work for Jewel, but I'm sure it'll work for Sue. And I believe they did it last time with Sue also, or maybe they didn't. I forget. It's been so long. But you need to hold off signing as many players as you can so that you can match all these restricted free agent contracts for Jordan Canna, for Mercedes Russell. That's what it comes down to. And I apologize to people. Yes, Carly Samuelson and Steph Talbot also are players that were on the roster and they could make a play for. But realistically, the totem pole, Jordan Canada and Mercedes Russell, that's who you need.
Mhm.
That's the glue. Those are the players who make this machine flow like they do. Having the key role players is so, so important. It's not about having 12 superstars on a team. It's about having people who can play their role well and doing it in the system that they've created. So I mean, like, what do you do, Rachel, if you're a GM?
I mean, you've got to find a way to get Epiphany Prince's contract, lowered or get that off the books. Maybe Sue Bird's willing to come back, and it's not about the money for her at that point. Brianna Stewart, I mean, that's arguably the greatest player in the world. Do whatever I don't care if you had to throw the damn kitchen sink at her. You do what you got to do. Um,
Change the name of the arena.
and so yeah, there is a little bit of finessing there, and I think the storyline here, and kind of like what we talked about with Chicago, running it back with them is going to take people buying in and willing to take a little bit less. Similar situation with Connecticut, whether JJ accepts that core or takes a little bit less to potentially secure a two guard, a high level two guard, starting two guard. It's tough. It's really, really hard. Again, if I'm the GM, I'm having those conversations and I'm doing everything I possibly can to secure as much of this roster.
You sounded like you were just about to drop an F-bomb.
I just, I was not, but I'm not looking at this and going, okay, hey, I'm going to go make like some crazy move and just bring in like, all these different players or this other massive free agent name. You don't need to. You have them in house. Now it's just a matter of finessing the books to make it work.
Yeah, no, I agree. And also, like, you know what? A situation that we've talked about is a possible sign and trade something with a Jewel Lloyd. If she wants out, get something for her, right? Now, I
For
like the
sure.
point you brought up. If you can get Sue Bird to come back at a lower scale contract, then you don't need to worry about the Prince and, matching stuff for Russell in Canada. I agree. You throw the kitchen sink at Stewie. I think everyone who's talked about this team will talk about that it's the Jewel Lloyd aspect of, what does she want? Where does she go? The really almost tricky, interesting aspect is like with this team, you know, I I guess if I'm the GM, the first person I'm calling is Jewel Lloyd. She's the one who because is this team a scary team if they bring back everybody but don't have Jewel Lloyd? Yeah, they're a scary team.
It's not the same though.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to
It's
see where her head is at with it all. How is she feeling about everything? What is Jewel Lloyd after right now? And that's a huge and maybe these things already been talked about, and had a lot to do with even
well,
Sue's
I don't even
agreement
know
to
if
come
they're
back.
technically allowed to do that, Rachel.
Well,
No, I'm messing
at
with you.
least
We all know
amongst the
that.
players,
We all know the teams are, third party burner phones. Let me tell my third cousin twice removed this, and maybe that third
you know,
cousin will,
the the the
relay the
the
message.
idea of Sue Bird coming back and how magical that is and being a part of that holds a lot of weight. I've got to imagine. It would for me. Now, I don't want to speak for Jewel Lloyd. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but that would hold a ton of weight. And what we all know this roster and this team can be. So that in my mind has got to be the direction that I would think if I were a betting woman, that was where people's heads would be at. Okay, hey, we're a part of something special. This is getting ready to be historic. Let's just do what we got to
First
do.
team to win 5.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that's where it becomes extremely tricky for this team because you're sitting there and you're going, Okay, Jewel, what? Like, I would have to think also, worst case scenario, you can I mean, look, she's an unrestricted free agent, so she can do whatever the hell she wants to do. I would have to think worst case scenario, you could finagle out of her, even if she wants to leave, to say, "Hey, we've had a good run. Let us sign and trade you so we can get something for you so that we can continue." And the interesting aspect of that is, and I want you to speak of this as a former coach, as a former player, because I'm a jerk. And if I was Jewel Lloyd and they said, "Hey, let's do a sign and trade so we can get something for you," I'd say, "Hell no, I'm going to a different team. I don't want to help your chances of being a good team."
I mean, yeah, that's another take to look at it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, Arya.
Rachel, I'm trying to get you to say something crazy off the walls. No, I mean I agree. Any final thoughts on Seattle? I mean, I think it's we could say this in a sentence. They
I'm
have the
just
space to
not
make it move, but can they bring back Jewel?
exactly. And I just don't see this team completely blowing up the whole wheel and going away from what they've been with Sue agreeing to come back. So, you make it as loaded up as you possibly can, which still requires a lot of buy-in. I would, but again, that's not to say that this whole thing won't get blown up and we have a lot of different names and faces. I just don't see it. So
I'd put it this way: if I am Seattle Storm, I say, Jewel, how many games do you want your mother sitting courtside?
she's
We'll
the
comp
best.
those,
She's the
right?
best.
Like you do whatever it can. If it's whatever, you get some deep dish pizza flown out from Chicago every once in a while, make her feel at home. Um, I don't know. You do whatever you can to bring Jewel back, and if Jewel wants to move on, then you need to start looking at, those free agency positions, a Rebecca Allen, a maybe a Diamond to Shields,
Sure.
anybody, an Angel McCautry, maybe just so they can run it back one more time for Sue Bird. I mean,
Yep.
that's kind of where maybe a Tiff Hayes. There's a
All
lot of
eyes.
players that could fill the role, but none of them would give them the ability to run it as I think Jewel Lloyd would.
Do you see a scenario where Stewie leaves?
No,
Yeah, I don't either.
I just can't because I mean, if you think about it this way, like Stewie's one of those players, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. Whatever team she goes to, right? Even if she went to Atlanta right now and they built up, a dispersal draft style roster where they're just pulling pieces, because that's essentially what they're doing right
Yeah.
now.
Uh huh.
Or an expansion team, not dispersal, expansion team. Um, I think you add Stewie to an expansion team roster and maybe not a favorite, some sort of a contender, yeah. So why is Stewie going to leave,
Right.
hamper her supermax abilities, and leave a team that, Sue's coming back to and they already have some stuff established?
Right.
So,
All right. There you
any
go.
final
All
thoughts?
eyes on Jewel Lloyd, folks. Let's go.
All eyes on Jewel Lloyd. Thank you, Rachel. And we'll be back with a few more teams later on.